All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bear's Guide to a 5. In this lesson, we are going to be talking about regions. We're still in Unit 1, we're still learning our foundational stuff to human geography, and this is another topic we are going to reference a lot. So, there's different types of regions. We're going to talk about those today. You got to be able to differentiate between them and obviously use them. So, what is a region? A region is an area that has similar characteristics, right? It is a way that we can organize humans and whatever they're doing in some type of classification. It just makes it easier for us to see, right? And we call this a spatial classification. In a space, we are organizing a certain thing. So there are different types of regions to help us solve, different questions that we may have. Our first type of region that we're going to talk about are formal regions. These are regions that have identifiable borders. Now, it's not like you go up to it and you see that border, but we can all agree, we all know on a map that these are the identifiable borders, and inside of these borders, every place in this region will share one characteristic, whether that be a physical characteristic or a cultural characteristic. So let's talk about that. So a physical characteristic is like a type of agriculture. It's the spring wheat belt, right? We can physically see that there. We know that they share this in this area, so we're going to make that a formal region. But we know that regions can be also based on culture, and we are going to go in depth on all the different aspects of culture. But just for the sake of the example, we could say a French-speaking region of Europe, right? We know that this area is dominated by French speakers, and that is a formal region. Another cultural formal region can just be state lines, border lines, country lines. Those are all identifiable borders, and then every area inside of that region follows the laws of that country, identified by that border. And here you can see it with the state of New York, right? Because we know everywhere inside those lines is the state of New York. It's a reflection of our culture, right? Formal regions can be individual countries, states, or counties. They have an identifiable border. Their shared characteristic is they followed that law. So that's our first region. We can also categorize the world into regions. Now, don't get too hung up on this because we are going to fill this out in class, and you're going to become very familiar with the world regions, which are formal regions because that's how we group them together. So don't get too hung up on this. We are going to go over it more in class, but understand that we'll need to know our world regions. Now, a functional region is a little different. Functional regions are one based around a central node or a central point. It's called a nodal region. The size of the region is determined by the node. How much influence does that node have in the surrounding area? So I use the examples of Pizza Huts because it's a pizza place. We know there's tons of them everywhere. And I pulled up this Google Maps of Pizza Huts in the area, and the squares I put on are my own. I just put that to show you. But if you notice that, yeah, all the regions are different sizes, but none of them overlap. And that's the thing with functional regions. They all have a center point, and they never overlap because you're either going to one Pizza Hut or the other. You're going to one Publix or the other. You're going to one airport or the other. Now, functional regions don't have to be some business like this. I just use it as an example because it's easy and straightforward. But you can think of it like schools. What school do you go to? Or if you've ever listened to radio stations on a car trip, you eventually lose signal to a radio station. It's because you're leaving that functional region. So as I said, the Pizza Huts are just an example, but it's kind of an idea of what they look like and how we would use them. Our final type of region you have to know is a vernacular region, or perceptual. What this means is that we think they exist, we know they exist, it's just unlike formal regions or functional regions, we don't know where they start and stop. We just know that once we're there, we're there. And the best example of that is gonna be the South, right? We live sort of in the South in Tampa, and we know there's Southern people in Tampa, but people would argue that Tampa's not Southern, or some people would say and that it's Southern. Or, there's all these different ideas of what is considered Southern, but we know when we're in the South, we're there. So remember, vernacular regions look like identifiable borders. They look like that in this picture, but they're not, right? We never know when we cross into a perceptual region. We just know that we're there. So, what do you need to know today? You have to be able to differentiate between the three different types of regions: formal, functional, and vernacular. And you have to understand how each type of regionalization of groups information happens, right? Understand why we use these different types of groupings. And then just the importance of regionalization itself, which is just to show data and maps and trends and all this fun stuff we're going to look at over time. As always, if you have any questions, please send them in the comments section. Make sure to hit that like button and make sure to smash that subscribe button so you stay up to date on new videos that come out so you don't get lost in the class. Thanks again, and this is another episode of Bear's Guide to a 5.